All right. So our research centered around the concept of face tuning and algorithms that are used usually in a digital context being visualized in the traditional artistic medium of oil paint. So when we think we, so my name is Gretchen. This is my studio practice, and I had great help from my studio team on the research and was mentioned at the beginning, great support from the Mud Foundation, Knight Foundation, and National Endowment in the US. So I call this work Facetuned Portraits. And when we think about the history of portraiture, it's always rife with these juicy stories that relate to how and if someone is painted. And I think about these power dynamics as being who is paying and who is painting. And there's always a dance between those two major power structures as to what image will come out in the end. But today we have sort of an additional power structure in the way that the human form is represented within the algorithm. So even if you don't know the term face tuning, I'm sure you know, are familiar with the impact. These are image modifications that are popular on social media platforms such as Instagram and TikTok, but they're built into our iPhone cameras. And there's a feature, a very popular feature on Zoom that also smooths out images. And I've been told by many people that when they have to do meetings on Google Hangouts instead of Zoom, they dislike that this beautifying feature isn't there. These algorithms, known as face tuning and body tuning, are normalizing, homogenizing, and they're also controlling. They compress all of the human face and experience into a single look, known either as Instagram face or TikTok face. And one of the things we look at in this paper is to what extent this is really a choice. We might think of this as something that people are inflicting upon themselves, but part of what the paper shows is that when you correlate, when you agree to use these algorithms, you actually are more likely to get exposure on these platforms. So if you don't play the game, then anything else you might be trying to share or present is less likely to catch the algorithm's fire and be seen as something worth presenting to other people. We're also seeing a disturbing rise in people going into plastic surgery clinics with face tuning apps and saying, make me look like this image that's been digitally and algorithmically enhanced. So what I do in my studio and in the process of making Facetune portraits is I take this process that's normally digital and seamless and invisible. There's even this whole cottage industry around calling people out for when they use these beautifying algorithms. And it's like a call out cancel culture that even though it's very prevalent and common to use it, there's still a lot of shame around its implementation. So what I do is I use custom robotics to ask the question of what happens when this digital process becomes physical, and what happens when we visualize the contrast between these two ways of presenting the human image. So what happens is we get a mess. We get these scars. The result is really two portraits in one, where there's this portrait of tension between who you are and who the algorithms say you should be. And this on-canvas battle happens within this single plane where a process that has been created by these apps to make us more beautiful ends up defacing us, making us grotesque, and in some cases, rather uncanny as well. Some of them come out almost as if it's an AI-generated person just failing to look real, when really it's the reverse. It's the uncanny valley in the opposite direction, where we begin to, as the human form starts to look disturbingly non-real. So some of the fun technology behind this, like the face tuning algorithms themselves, I take from popular culture. I don't write those algorithms. I take the most popular ones on social media. There's actually a major application, I think in 2018, it was the most downloaded or most paid download in the Apple Store. It's just called Facetune. And I have 2 different machines that I work with through Matter Labs, which is in New York. The first is an oil paint printer that takes any photograph or any image and prints it in oil paint. So it comes out wet and gooey and ready to be manipulated. And then the second robot that we built, again with the support of the Mud Foundation, is basically an XY plotter that then applies the algorithmic modifications into and on top of the original or the naturally made photograph. Obviously, drawing plotters are all over the place, and you can definitely buy one, but we've also open sourced a design that allows anyone for about $500 to make their own drawing plotter of virtually any size. We wanted this to be not just interesting algorithmically and conceptually, but we wanted people to be able to experiment with this as well. So my website and the Mud Foundation's website has this robotics drawing, how to make your own drawing robot guide. It's Arduino, and we basically turned it into an IKEA guide. So subject matter-wise, I initially started looking at kind of some of these historical paintings like the Mona Lisa, but pretty quickly came to the decision that using photography-based images to start has a lot of power. If we think about the rise of selfie feminism and any appropriation of taking the camera and subjecting yourself to your own gaze, being very much lost in the algorithmic process of face tuning. I've also been doing a lot of influencers and celebrities, and also subjecting myself to this process through my own selfies. There's a couple themes within this that I think are really interesting. One is that in a traditional portrait process, we're seeking to really capture a likeness. And what happens in this process is that likeness gets annihilated by the robot. There's, because these algorithms make us all look more and more the same, to try and find a portrait that can survive this algorithmic modification, we rely more heavily on setting, on clothing, on accessories, on objects that might be in it. And then another interesting theme that I've been seeing come out of this is in the apps themselves, the Facetune apps themselves, their naming they'll literally have settings called like natural setting, and natural setting like makes my nose straight and my breasts very large, like as if any of this is in any sense kind of natural. So a lot of the research that we're doing and presenting these kind of both in like an academic, technical, and in a fine arts context as well, is to really be not so much making any kind of value judgment on this being the Facetune and these algorithmic modifications being evil or bad, or obviously, having potential to impact body image in very negative ways, but to think of it as more as reflective of the way that much of our life goes, where we exist digitally and we exist physically, and where those boundaries are increasingly getting blurred. There's tension and a level of uncomfortability with having to coexist as ourselves, as our bodies. This example I'm showing right here is a quite interesting one, because there is a mix of genders, a mix of different races, and the algorithm goes in and applies, really attempts to fold all of that into a single form of face and experience. So I have a couple more just examples of how this work ends up looking, but I'll just flip through these and we can move to questions. I know we're also a little bit behind, so I'm happy to move to talk to you guys now.
Fantastic. Can I just say what a fantastic body of work and so timely. Do we have any questions in the room? Otherwise, I'm going to ask the first question maybe. Any questions? First questions? No? Yes, I was really interested in this idea of simplification, oversimplification, and generalization that is happening at the same time in the algorithm. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the kind of unpacking of the underlying logic of how these algorithms work, and because it says so much about, yeah, kind of, in a way, our society, and yeah, I'm really interested in what you found were some of these characteristics, these traits.
Yeah, so the space tuning algorithms they're sort of black boxes, right? Like, because I don't conceptually, I don't write them. Like I said, I pull them from culture and find ways to sort of show where they are changing the body quite a lot. But there are some very standard things that occur. Eyes get larger, lips get larger, waist gets smaller. There's one that is quite interesting here, where in this photo, the algorithm mistook my hand as being my breast, so it enlarged it and made it like absolutely knobby and disgusting because it tried to blow it up, thinking that it was this a different part of my body. And so some of these areas where it fails as well can be quite revealing, because you can see what's happening here. Like, this is the natural preset that's causing these, enhancements, as it were. Um, and so, yeah, one of the things that we're going into in the next couple months is to be writing our own face tuning algorithm, but not to make a sort of a different point, but just so we can basically, there are some open source versions that we do want to take and be able to reveal a little bit more about how the facial recognition in it is working, because that's the first thing it has to do, is identify what is a breast, what is an eye, what is a nose. And even like it will work on some portraits, like the Mona Lisa, it could capture onto that, but anything that's slightly more impressionistic, it won't even be able to see the actual face. And we do also find that it will keep going. Like, if we face tune once, it will Facetune again and Facetune again and Facetune again until it can no longer recognize the face as a face. Like, you can keep running this process, and the only time that it stops and says your eyes are big enough, your breasts are big enough, your waist is small enough, is when the facial recognition no longer even registers the changes that is made as to being human.
Fascinating. We've got two questions here. Yeah, I think you had the first question. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. It was really fascinating. And there's some quite interesting research done about cultural differences of body shape changes according to country. And I wondered if the face tuning also takes that into account, depending on whether you're in America or Spain or England or wherever, that that people are looking for particular features, whether that's bigger hips or smaller boobs. I don't know. Or whether you've taken that into account.
Sorry, as I just go into my photos here, but I want to show you this exhibition I'm working on is I'm doing the Miss Universe contestants bathing suit competition. So this is a perfect example of what should be 100 completely different looking women, right? Like, that's the idea, is that everyone's from everywhere. And of course, what you are getting is it's trying to turn these very different, diverse bodies into a single form. And because it isn't, oh, I know you're in South Korea, so therefore I want to make different changes. Like, there are different apps like Meitu in China, and it's actually quite common in Korea for entire families to get a family portrait and for everybody to be face tuned within that, like automatically as part of the service. And so when you get like a variety of ages as well, and everyone's been made to look a lot younger. I also just did this Miss Pakistan who, for cultural reasons, was not wearing a bathing suit, but the algorithm tried very hard to give her curves underneath the bikini. It really did everything it could to try and sexualize essentially the the body as presented here, you can see how some of these lines, were non-existed, were being, made it form-fitting, essentially. But I look forward to diving into more of that research. It sounds really compelling.
Fantastic. Yeah, Tula.
Quick question. Is this also done to men?
Yes, it's. I'm really glad that you brought this up again. Sorry that we're just in my general photos here. It is done to men, and I think it's almost a disservice to not present a lot of men in the context of this, because it is very common for men to do it, especially like to add abs and like to add muscle. Like the modifications are different, but they let's see. I know I have
A few
one in
examples.
particular.
Yes. Few puffed up men.
Social media here, it'll be in here. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is like a bunch of Facetune images, and then like every time I go to a Taylor Swift concert, this is the content you see when you see my entire camera roll. It could be worse for sure. Let's get to the bottom here. I did a Donald Trump, which was quite interesting, because obviously that, the whole relationship of, is this being dishonest and is this fake news, and to what extent is this an accepted part of culture, and to what extent is it being deceitful, is I think a really different cultures treat that differently. It's so much more common in a lot of parts of Asia that people are very comfortable with the idea that this is occurring. There isn't as much shame in it as there is in the West. Let's try and find a male one, but yeah, I can also send by email, because I don't want to. If I can find a man, I would love to show you a man.
While you do that, can I just ask you one last question, which is, when can we see your
Yes.
work? Are you planning to bring it to the UK anytime soon?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a studio in London, and so while I'm making these in New York, I'll be back with some of the work. I'm exhibiting at Berlin Art Week and Paris Photo, and I'll be at, I think I'll have at least one of these in Miami.
Absolutely
At
fantastic.
in those places, please do, and please get in touch. Like there's so much like researching. I think potential to be making the research around this deeper, and that's why I miss being in person with all of you. So thank you so much for giving me the time to share this with you, and do stay in touch. I'd love to connect if you guys have any. Oh, this is the royal family. I know this is a bit, I did this one before we found out she had cancer, but like you can see the way that it treated the different bodies.
Thank you so much, Gretchen. A big round of applause. Fantastic work.
Thank you guys.